Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode with the Distant Brothers Catch Up.
Yes.
Uh, so we kind of had to move this recording a little bit earlier on our side because I'm a busy man and I have things to do. So it's sort of an hour or 2 hours earlier than what we usually do, which doesn't really matter for you, the viewers, because it's a
They
recording.
don't care. They don't care.
They don't care. But it's good to just let them know how we're doing things, how we
But to
roll.
be clear, it's still Friday in the United States and Saturday in Australia.
Yep. Um, so just to recap on our last discussion, we were talked about the whole, moving as a kid from one country to another, and the experience, I guess, with the migration. In this episode, we're gonna track a little bit into how we went at school.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, particularly primary school, some secondary school, and then talk about basically back to school and try to connect it all,
And also, I'd be interested in talking about the differences in the educational system from US and Australia.
as well as for me particularly, and actually Dangus can talk to us as well. Primary school in Vietnam, as much as he can share in Nigeria as well.
Primary school in Vietnam. I didn't really go to primary school.
But I'm sure you have some perspective on it.
Um,
He's like,
to-
no, man, they just dropped me off in
yeah,
Australia.
not really, because like I actually left just before primary school,
Okay, so you
and
really have
then
no personal context. Uh,
yeah,
did you have
um,
siblings, like cousins or whatnot, that
so
did primary school in Vietnam?
I had cousins. I kind of know the system roughly, but I don't really sort of know the ins and outs of it. But
Fair enough. Fair enough.
what I can probably talk about is how crazy their extracurricular is.
Like what?
Like,
Come on, let's get into it. Let's do it.
okay, so let's start with Vietnam then, right?
Yeah.
So from what I've seen in my cousins and all that, um, so the system in Vietnam, there's a I guess it's called a preschool, right? So you have a preschool where they start at an early age up to, I guess, kindergarten. Um, I think actually kindergarten is part of that preschool as well.
Okay.
Um, Again, don't quote me because I'm not very familiar with it. But
That's all right.
there's a school called well well the class is called in Vietnamese it's called Mầm non, right? Mầm non is like a if you think about like a seed, right?
Yes.
It's like a seed. So that's what they
Oh, okay.
call the class, right? So that's sort of basically seeding into
Ah, like nursery in the UK and in Nigeria. That makes
yeah,
perfect
it's kind of like nursery, yeah. And then you got your primary school, of course, and you also have your high school. So I think they go from up till 6 or 7, and then they go high school. Generally, I've
Okay.
from what I've
Like
understood,
sounds like a middle school, right? Um,
yeah, it's sort of like a middle school because it starts from like year one, and then it goes to so it goes the nursery goes preschool, kindergarten, and then you go
okay,
into year one, which is your primary, and
okay,
then I think it stops at year 6, and then
okay.
you
That makes
go up
sense.
to year 7 till year 12, and
Okay,
then from there they have also similar to what we call in Australia TAFE, or I guess on your US side it will be called college or community college or something sort of like that.
okay. Yep.
And
2 year
then
college.
yeah, so if you can't make it to university, then that's sort of where you go, and they sort of call that like industrial experience school kind of thing, like
Yeah.
tech
Okay.
or a technical school. I don't know what
Yeah.
you would call
Vocational, technical, trade school.
it. Yeah, trade school.
Okay.
So it's very similar, but there's a little bit of, I guess, difference in how they sort of break it up, right? Um, that's as much as I know. But what I was going to raise is how crazy the extracurricular is. So my cousin, who was at the time, I think year 4 or year 5,
Hmm.
she was doing ballet, she
Oh, wow.
was doing piano, she was
Wow.
doing extra studies at home, which included maths, English. English is a big thing, maths, and also a little bit of like literature in Vietnamese as well.
Okay.
So it's funny, it's weird how the schools are set up because they finish it around like say 2, 3 o'clock, right? But then afterwards, they have like the extracurricular, like sports activities. That's around an
Interesting.
hour or 2 hours, and then after they come home, then they study the tutorial stuff, which is then
Okay.
an extra 2 or 3 hours. So I've seen her like do these extracurricular stuff all the way up to like 9 p.m.
Wow. So there's
It's
a
nuts.
real, uh, you just say there's a real heavy emphasis not only on the academic side, but also the non-academic,
That's right.
either trade or vocational side. Would that be
Yeah,
accurate?
and it's pretty crazy because what's funny is that mentality was actually brought to Australia, right?
Really?
Because before, I guess, the immigrants, Vietnamese, Chinese, all that came over, tutoring was not a big thing in Australia. Like
Hmm.
there was no pressure or no essence of tutoring on a weekend or after hours for kids to get better at sort of, academics, right? This then basically what happened was the Asian migrants came and they started tutoring their kids extracurricular
I
stuff,
see.
which then caused an imbalance, right? Because these
Ah,
kids are getting
the
really smart, all
demographics.
that stuff, right? And then what happened was a lot of the Australians then was like, well, crap, I have to give my kids tutorial now to be able to catch up. So that's
Interesting.
how tutoring actually came about in Australia.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure there's tutoring beforehand, but it wasn't as extensive. But now there's like school for, tutoring to go into selective school. So selective school in Australia is like
Hmm.
you go into high school, but it's a special high school, which is sort of um, it's kind of like how do you say it? A scholarship kind of thing. Not really scholarship, but like it's a sponsored kind of learning. So it's a high school where you don't pay a lot of money. You only pay for the extracurricular or the books and all that stuff. But the school fees are very low because it's subsidized by the government, right?
I see.
Um, so a lot of the Asian kids were getting into the selective school because of the tutoring, and then
Hmm.
all the Australians were like, "Well, crap, I have to, get my kids to tutoring, otherwise they
Catch
won't make
up.
it and catch up." And that's how it popped up, man. Like when I was young, like my dad forced me to go tutoring. I didn't like that, but he was like, "Well, if you don't go, you're not going to make it." I mean, I didn't make it either way, but you know, um, but a lot of the Asian parents are sending the kids to, yeah, get ready for the selective stuff. Also the HSC, which is the final, I guess for your US, it's called what's that final test before uni?
Oh, the SAT.
SAT, right?
So that's
So
for
yeah,
folks outside of the U.S. The Scholastic Aptitude Test. I think
yes.
achievement, one of those things. But anyway,
So we have the HSC, which is the high school something. Hang on, let me just find out what
it's
HSC.
okay. It's okay to use the Google.
Higher school certificate, which is the HSC. And basically, excuse me. So basically, a lot of the parents started sending kids to tutoring, and the demand of tutoring started going crazy.
Okay,
So at the time when I was in high school, um, nearly everyone was doing tutoring. Like, if you didn't do tutoring, you're gonna fall behind. Um,
interesting.
so that was a lot of pressure. But like nowadays, I feel like there is tutoring, but I think they're a bit more lax on the kids. It's only if the kids want to or need to, but I don't think they sort of force it out of just, you have to go kind of thing. Um,
Do you think that's a result of the pendulum, so to speak,
the
swinging so
parents,
far to one
yeah,
end with the hyperachievement, and do they see like the effects on children, or how? What do you think?
I think it's So I think it goes back to I have this theory, right? And it's like an alternating generation mentality,
Ah,
right? You know what I'm getting at. So my my grandpa would, let's say for example, my grandpa would be harsh on my parents and we were like, you have to do this, you have to work, you have to make money, all that stuff, right? So then there's a good chance and a higher probability that the next generation, the parents would be like, well, we had all this pressure, we don't want to force that on the kids,
mm,
right? So they're a bit more lax. And then
mm,
what happens is the generation after that, because we were so lax, then we might look at our kids and be like, well, I turned out like this way because my parents was way too easy, so I need to be a little bit different, right? So
right.
similar to, I guess, with the tutoring thing, right? Where maybe, let's say for example, me, when I experienced tutoring as a kid, it was so much pressure, so much stress, and also
Okay.
like as a kid, you don't want to go to school 7 days a week, right? Um, but that's what I used to do.
Oh wow.
And so now with my kids, I'm more like, nah, you know what? If you're smart, you're smart. If you're not, you're not. Like, you can be a plumber, you can be a architect, you can be whatever you want. I don't care, as long as you're a good person, right?
Okay, that
Um,
sounds familiar.
but I think the mentality of the alternating generations thing, it does sort of happen, right? Like
Okay.
subconsciously in our minds, we sort of try to do better or do things in a way where it's different
Mm,
to how our parents do it. Like we take the good stuff, but the
sure.
majority of the bad stuff we sort of try and change it around, and therefore has a different effect on the kid, right?
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Um,
So, talk about how your primary school experience was in Australia. Particularly emigrating there, and with a traditional Vietnamese parents. How did that go in terms of
so,
school, culture, social dynamics, etc.?
so when I first started in primary school, and I had, this was when I first came to Australia the year after we started primary school. I was sort of, I think I was 1 year later than everyone. Um, but yeah, funny story. So first day of primary school, went into this to sort of had the interview with the principal. Principal asked me, "What's your name?" Now, coming from Vietnam and not knowing too much English, um, you know, I mean, when people ask you as a kid, "What's your name?" you refer to your child name that your parents keep calling you, right? So
Oh,
at
okay.
home, my whole family used to, like my parents, grandparents, all that, called me Bo, which is Bo or Bo,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
But my name is Dang. Like, you know, it's the Bo is sort of like a family nickname for me, or kind of thing.
Sure. Sure.
And so yeah, I said Bo, right? So little did I know, I was setting myself up to be picked on. Um, then the principal got that was the name and sort of wrote it down in the form and everything like. And I think my parents also wrote that down on the form because
Okay.
I don't know if they actually understood, what they were writing, but at the time, so the whole of my primary school, I was called Bo Tran,
Really?
not even my real name. So you can see how weird it
Oh,
is
wow.
to like do my paperwork and like,
That's
primary
interesting.
school,
They
I was
didn't
referred as Bo
insist
Tran.
on. So, around what time period? Just guessing at what? Maybe 90s?
1995,
Okay, mid
something like
90s.
that.
Okay.
95, 96, something like that.
Okay. And what was kind of the demographics, if you recall, of like your primary school in terms of Asians, Pacific Islanders, Southeast Asians, Australians, Indigenous, if you remember?
So during my primary school, there was definitely a mix. I think the class was fairly mixed. You've got Asians, which consisted of, Vietnamese, some Chinese, Indonesians, and then you've got the Australians. Majority actually of my friends in primary school were Australians. And when I say Australians, I mean like, Caucasian Australians, right?
Okay.
Um, And yeah, there was actually not a lot of Asians that are like Vietnamese and all that, but there was also a handful of sort of Lebanese. Um,
Okay.
so it was kind of a mixed class, but definitely a majority was like Australians, right? Um, and even the teachers, I remember at the time, were mostly Australians, majority
Okay.
of it. Um, but yeah, it was an interesting thing because one, I didn't know my English that well at the time, so I had to sort of start learning how to read, how to speak, that kind of stuff. Um, and with my name, I was sort of made fun of. So like people called me bow tie, which is
Gotcha.
um, and I was lucky, I guess, because like I went to a Catholic primary school,
Okay.
so there's not a lot of, I guess, fights or sort of argue, like sort of, picking or bullying, that kind of stuff. Like majority of the guys were pretty good.
Okay.
Um, and we all got along with each other.
Okay.
Actually, funny story. So you know how today, right? You go out with $5, it literally means nothing. I remember back in our primary school, when you had $1 or even $2, you were a millionaire. Like you could go to the canteen with like $5 and buy literally your whole class lollies, right? We're talking about like lollies were like 20 cents back then.
Okay. 26 lollipops. Okay. Cool.
Like
Cool.
paddle pop sticks and like super dupers, right? I don't know if you
What are
have.
super dupers? It's
Oh,
like
you
bubble gum, chewing gum.
you don't know what super dupers are?
No. What are
Oh,
super
so I
dupers?
gotta show
Curious.
you super dupers, man. Like this, super dupers. So super dupers were our. You weren't Australian if you weren't having a super duper as a kid. You know, in summertime. That was it, right? So what I'll do is, oh, hang on. So you're not going to be able to see this because it's going to be shared on my screen, but I'll send
That's fine.
you the link so that you can actually see it. Um, 1 second. So if you go to that link,
Okay.
so Super Dupers were ice blocks, which were flavored in colors, not based on the fruit, but colors and sugars and whatever have you, right? Um, and this is what basically we consumed during summer when it was really, really hot, especially at school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. I know what those are. So for the Americans listening, so these are basically the frozen popsicles, we call them. They're basically fruit. Hell, as far as we knew when we were growing up,
fruits.
fruit infused iced popsicles wrapped in plastic cellophane, different flavors and sizes. But go ahead.
But yeah, then like back then, if you had $5, you were buying the whole canteen. Now, like if my kids were to go to the canteen, I would have to give them at least $20. Like,
Wow, inflation, people. That's inflation.
like, yeah, I remember when I was a kid, like pies were like probably like $2.50 pies, like meat
Okay.
pies or like sausage rolls
Oh,
or
wow, you
like
guys had those
sandwich.
too. Okay, we had those in Nigeria for sure.
Oh man, sausage rolls were the best for kids, and meat pies as well. Um, but now like meat pies and sausage rolls at canteens, easy $7.
Oh, that's obscene.
It's
That's
crazy,
insane.
man. Even in high school, I remember when I was in high school, um, like going to the canteen, if you had like $10, that was enough to carry you on, right? Like
Okay.
you were able to get like a drink, a breakfast, and a lunch, right?
Oh, wow.
But now $10 is probably gonna eat you one meat pie.
And it's a stale meat pie too.
I mean, Coke nowadays costs $4.
And for the people in Coke, as in Coca-Cola, the
Coca-Cola,
cola product.
yeah,
Okay.
that's like $4 for a can now, actually.
Don't even get how much for the bottle?
Bottles, I think it's like 450, five.
Okay,
Yeah,
because it tastes better in the bottle. Anyway,
we don't have glass bottles anymore. or
Ah,
plastic. And you're right, Coke does taste better in glass bottles.
yeah,
I don't know why.
you don't know why?
I don't know why. It does taste better though.
I don't know either. Yeah, we because we Americans and we like to complain when we don't get our way. We made the world to bring bottled Coca-Cola back from Mexico. And
Oh,
so you now have the option of canned or bottled with real sugar Coca-Cola products and other
oh.
Mexican type of sodas. But anyway, so even the cans are that expensive.
Yeah. So cans, I think the cheapest I've seen is around $3. The most expensive I've seen is $4. Bottles I've seen from $4 to $5. And we're
Okay.
talking about like the 600, 700 ml bottle, right?
Yeah,
The
that's
plastic
yeah.
bottles.
Okay, gotcha.
And then if you want to get the 1 liter or 1.2 liter,
Hmm.
I think it's called 1.25 liter bottle actually.
Yeah,
It's
something like that.
$6.50.
Might as well go for the six.
Guess how much water costs?
Oh no, don't tell me.
A bottle of water costs $3.50.
At school.
Yeah. So you can
And
see
the
how
kid,
crazy it is.
it's like the kid needs jobs now with school. I need to work.
So yeah, so that was my primary school. Oh, actually, primary school, I was one funny story. So as a kid, I was very shy, especially when I first started
You
in school. I
know,
was
I don't
very
believe it,
shy.
Angus. I don't believe it.
So the story of how I turned from the shy to who I am now, that's going to be another story because
Oh yeah.
that was during my uni discovering of trying to go out there and finding a girlfriend. That was the
Oh,
reason of me
that's
switching.
that's its own episode for sure.
Yeah. But when I was a kid, one, I didn't, well, my English wasn't that very well. Um, Two, I was very shy. So there was this one time that I was busting. I was busting to the toilet. I was holding it in. The only time in my life where I've done this, I sat there, teacher was, teaching, and I was just like sitting there shaking my legs, I was like, oh man, can I
Trying
hold
to hold it
on?
in.
And then it just happened, right? Like the tap just turned on and off it went, and I literally peed my pants in class. And funny thing was, no one noticed, but it started sort of smelling a little bit, right?
Uh-huh.
So I put my hand up and I was like, yeah, I need to go to the toilet. And then she's like, oh, like now? And she's like, well, I was like,
Kind
yeah,
of
it's
happened.
kind of happened. So quite memorable as a kid. I think I was the only one in my whole primary years to ever have done that.
That you know
That I know of, yes, true, actually,
of.
because there were some people that had some really funky smells, and I
I'm
didn't know
telling
where
you,
they came
man,
from.
you never know. You never know. You never know.
But as primary school, I was pretty good. I was actually given a one of those awards for being like the most helpful, the most friendly, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And I actually got my name scripted, like inscribed in one of the trophies in the primary school.
Wow.
Um,
Nice.
so that was primary school. And high school, oh man, like high school was just rough. Like it was an all boys school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I went all boys school, and as you know, from all boys school, we do some weird things. We get into fights, we get into arguments. We did something called polling,
Polling. As in, polling?
like polling, like lift someone up, spread the legs, and to the pole.
Ooh. Polling. Ouch.
We did that quite a lot during lunchtime. For some reason, there was a sort of common understanding that anyone could be targeted during lunchtime to be
Oh,
the victim of
the
polling,
polling. Wow.
including teachers.
Okay, okay, okay,
Um,
okay,
we were a pretty rowdy bunch. So that was one of the things that was a bit rough at school. There was of course punch-ons, and then there was also fights with other schools, and
okay,
I wasn't involved in that. Also during high school, that was during the time of the Asian gangs and
okay.
the different like underground gangs and all that stuff, and
Gotcha.
um, there was a lot of these kids who were Asians part of these gangs, and they sort of had infights with each other and all that stuff. And I remember there was one time when we actually set a time and date at one of the park to have a fight, like a fight with another school kind of thing.
Okay, okay.
And I remember everyone sort of went to the shopping mall and got the
Mhm.
shopping trolleys, and
Okay.
those shopping trolley bars. So
Oh
we
yeah.
unscrewed that and used that as as a weapon.
Yeah, y'all some violent young people.
The funny thing is the art school didn't turn up.
Well,
Um,
yeah, would you?
so yeah, we were pretty rough. And then one other thing that we did that was probably made headlines, and it did actually make headlines, was we hacked the school system and stole the trial papers. So trial papers were like before the HSC finals. Like they give you like a
Okay,
test paper which kind of replicates this whole sitting.
okay,
Um, and you sort of do that, and that gives you an indication of where you are and all that stuff. And also it contributes a little bit into your overall marks.
okay. Like a preliminary or
Yeah, it's like a
practice.
like preliminary practice kind of thing. But that also helps set the rankings in the classes, right?
Oh, okay,
Um, so and when I say we, it was two of my friends plus this other guy. We were in computer studies, and my friends managed to somehow hack into the system, got into the database, got the test results. Um, then we started spreading the answers to everyone. Um, and these Lebanese kids were very smart. So they took the answer papers into the actual test,
okay,
and actually placed it on the table. Very
okay.
smart, right? Um, and yeah, they got caught. So there was a big bust on that. We went on to the newspapers,
Oh
um,
wow.
because basically, as part of the Catholic trials, all the trial papers were the same because it was written by the archdiocese, right? And
Ah, I
and
see.
so therefore it would have affected other schools as
Of
well.
course, of course,
Um, so they had to actually can it, and we made us
of
resit the
course.
test. They had to redo the test and everything.
Weird tests and everything.
And then there was big investigation. Every kids who were involved basically got pulled in, saying where did you get the papers from, who got the papers, who gave it to you, that kind of stuff. Um, a lot of people got suspended. Some of the Lebanese kids, they even got lawyers in to,
Wow. Okay.
to lawyer
Okay.
them out of suspension.
Okay.
Um, I almost got suspended, but I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I just found this paper on the ground. That's it.
So what did your parents do? Like, because I don't know how it is in Australia, but here, immigrant parents are on a whole nother level than like indigenous parents. So, like
Yeah, look,
Vietnamese parents in the United States are another level than like
I mean, I didn't get in
American
trouble,
parents.
so like it didn't affect me, right? Because I didn't get suspended, I didn't get pulled. Like I got pulled in for investigation,
Oh,
but
okay,
I didn't
okay.
pull anything, right? Because I
So
mean,
you did
technically, I
not
didn't
bring
say it.
okay, you didn't bring shame to your house. Okay,
No, no.
okay.
Um, but yeah, if let's say if that did happen, I think my parents, especially my dad, would have had to buy 5 different brooms. Just FYI, as a kid to now, for my dad, teaching was always the hard way, right? Um, Funny thing is, when I was small as a kid, right, I didn't know what he was doing. So my dad is like a electrician, so he
Okay,
does like soldering and all that stuff.
gotcha.
So one day we were at home and he was fixing something, and he handed me the soldering iron,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Hold this for me." Being a kid, you don't know what it was.
Oh, you didn't grab it by the
I
oh.
grabbed it by the actual heat thing, and I burnt my hand. So, as loving parents in a Vietnamese home, rather than, "Oh, are you okay? Like, do you want me to put some ointment or run it by the tap?" No, no, no. It was the, "You freaking stupid." Next
Why did you
minute,
do that?
next
Why
minute,
did
the
you do that?
broom
Are
came
you
out.
stupid? Are you stupid?
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, my head is hurting, but now my ass is hurting.
Uh-huh. Look at all
um,
this flesh on my soldering iron.
so yeah, tough love as a kid. And I remember as a kid going into school with like, hit marks and everything like that. My oh god, that's the alarm. Sorry, I think I went a bit over time, but
That's all right.
um,
That's all right. It was good. It was good.
yeah, when I was a kid, when I went to school, I got all these marks on my, on my butt, on my
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
and that kind of stuff.
Corporal punishment, in-home
And then the
punishment.
teachers like, "Oh, what happened to you? Did your parents do this to you? Do you want us to, talk to your parents, that kind of stuff?"
I fell down the stairs.
No,
But
I
Dangus,
fell down the tree. I was climbing and I fell down the tree. Surprisingly, the branches got me on these marks.
but Dangus, you said you fell down the stairs. Well, the tree was on the stairs when I fell.
Because I knew, right, that at that time, because of all the, I guess, kids being punished and all that stuff, it was a common thing for Asian parents to do these things,
Of course, of
and the whole
course.
government had like this whole thing to stop it, and you have to repeat the report to the police and all that stuff, and I knew it was coming, so I was just like, no, I just fell, you know. I mean, that's how we're built, right? Like we're built that
Oh,
way. Like, there's
yes.
not none of this snitching your parents when they hit you and smack you. None of this weak. Oh, I got hit by my parents. Like, help me. Like,
No, it's
no.
always I fell down the stairs.
Yeah.
A branch hit my eye. No, but
uh,
that was good. It was good to learn about because we've known each other a decade, and but we never really went this deep in this particular
no.
subject. So it's
Yeah.
definitely good to hear that. Uh, I'll give the reprise on the one of the next episodes, but I wanted to actually just let you go um, to get a little more of the detail of not only your transition from Vietnam, but also the impact of being an immigrant,
Mm.
learning and having to master a new language, which a lot of people who aren't immigrants or immigrant raised take for granted, right? And so I wanted to really allow you that time to really get into it and also see how, against adversity, that I mean, I had it easier for you because the lingua franca in Nigeria is English, British
Mm.
English. So coming to Australia, you had just the culture shock of being in Australia, and then the language, and then you phenotypically looking different than the majority
Oh
and
yeah.
all of that. So definitely commendable
The
on
fu-
that.
the funny thing is, rather than knowing English, I think I told you last episode that I knew Chinese, right?
Exactly.
So
So
it
did you
was
like speak Chinese like piss people off sometimes?
so like that I don't know if you watch The Simpsons. I hope you do. But you know how Homer had that episode where he learns new things and then old things go
Yes,
out.
yes,
That's
yes.
what happened, right? So I knew Chinese, I knew Vietnamese. Came to Australia, my parents stopped speaking Chinese. They started speaking Vietnamese at home.
Okay.
I learned English at school. Off goes Chinese, right?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense because I
I
learned in the primary school French for like 5 years, and I know literally like 22 words in French, despite having I think two French and Creole speaking girlfriends. Like,
wow.
yeah, just
I'm
it's one
surprised
of
you
those
didn't keep it.
things. The French, well, that's a story for another time.
The girlfriend. Maybe both.
So any
Well,
last words, Dan?
well, the thing is, I thought about it, man. Like I was like, if I continue to keep Chinese, I wonder how much different it would have been for me because you know how it is with Chinese with the whole manufacturing and all the products are now
Sure,
Chinese.
sure,
Like
sure.
to be able to speak Chinese is, I feel like it's such an advantage nowadays,
Oh, it's a killer
right?
app in itself, for sure.
And also what I've noticed is the Chinese, they respect you when you can actually speak their language, and they're
Yes.
generally very nice to people who attempt to, learn their
Yes.
language, and they sort of treat you as part of the whole
Yes.
culture thing.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
great point. I noticed that, my time in Brazil, even with I'm not fluent in Portuguese by any means. I would probably say I speak Portuguese at like a second, third grade level.
mm,
But like you said, it's like a whole, like your experience just, it's a whole nother level. There's a more of a, like, I guess, welcoming, just like you're not one of them, but you're definitely not like a stranger or foreigner as much. So I can see what you mean that you kind of bridge the gap there.
so yeah, so that was my experience of school.
Awesome.
Actually, one more thing. Would you have guessed it if I told you I was in the choir?
I could see that. Not because you wanted to, but your parents were like,
No, no, no. I
yeah.
wanted to. I wanted
Okay,
to.
wow, okay, I didn't see that coming. I didn't
And
see that
then
coming.
also, I was a altar server for the priest.
I can see that. I can see that.
And my life would have been different if I decided to go down that path. So when I was a kid, I think it was around year five, year four,
Mhm.
maybe 5, 6 actually. I was very close to the parish priest, right? And he loved, me working with him and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And he actually offered me. He's like, well, you know what? I think you have really great potential because I was really into the whole religion and all that stuff. Like I used
Gotcha.
to, I used to be a church boy. I used to
Okay.
go to, I used to go to church every week and be part of the choir and be, altar serving and all that stuff. Um, and so he offered me. He's like, oh, you know what? Like I see a great potential in you. Would you like to go down the path of becoming a priest?
Like seminary and all that
Like
stuff.
seminary and everything. And he would have
Wow.
actually sponsored and gave me a scholarship and all that stuff,
Wow.
right? You know what my answer was? And actually, you know what? If I did become a priest, it would have brought my family so much honor because my grandma and my mum are such advocates of Catholicism,
Oh,
and
okay.
and I think they would have been so happy. But my answer to the priest was, I'm sorry, I think I like girl too much.
Well,
I'm
it's
sorry.
honest. Look, it's honest. I mean, it's honest.
So I actually said that to her. I said, I like girls too much. I don't know if I can do it. And we had a good laugh, and I continued being the old server until I
Okay.
think year seven.
Okay.
But it was definitely a good experience because the whole like religion and everything gave me a good foundation. Even though right now I don't go to church that often, or actually I haven't been in years.
Mhm.
Um, but it doesn't actually mean that I'm not a Catholic, right? So this is where a lot of people sort of look at me and they're like, why do you go to church? It's part of your faith, it's part of your religion. You have to go. And I said
Yeah.
to them, I'm like, honestly, I go to church and I see people going like this, right? And I'm like,
Mhm.
what's the point? Like,
Mhm.
if you're not gonna be there, and if you're not gonna be wholeheartedly be there to listen and to learn,
Yeah.
then why are you going? Going to church doesn't forgive you of any sin. It
Uh,
it's supposed to be you have to be there, listen and learn and reflect on your
yeah. You have to be
things.
present.
You have to be
Yes.
present. And that's what really turned me off church, right? Like when I was a kid,
Okay.
I didn't notice this as much. But as I grew older, what I've noticed is people just started chattering in church, people were
Mhm.
on their phone, people were like nodding off, like half the
Yeah.
time someone was sleeping. And for me, and I know this is not it's part of the topic today, but I
It's
just thought
okay.
I'd
It's,
bring it
it's
up.
it's the Tops and Dangus show. So
But for me, it's like religion, any religion, right? It's all
yes.
about being a good person, right? And yes, there's a difference in religion, which is who you believe is the end or be almighty.
Sure.
Um, and for Catholic, it's God and Jesus and all that,
Yeah. The Holy
the
Spirit, the
Holy Spirit,
Trinity.
right? And for me, living as a Catholic, being a good person and not basically causing any harm to anyone,
Sure.
that for me is the church, right? Like for me, it's me helping others whenever they need, me being nice to people whenever they need, and me being there for people who needs me. For me, that's my essential religion, right? I still believe in that there is a God. I believe that you can go
Sure.
to hell and
Sure.
heaven, all that stuff. But for
Sure.
me, I just even though the Bible says when one or more people gather, then that's the church.
There I am. Yep.
There I am. But for me, it's like being with friends on a retreat and me cooking for them and taking care of them. That's my way of expressing my religion, right?
No, I think that's a great point because you mentioned scripture, and one thing that Jesus told the disciples when they were essentially seeming to be hung up on all the different commandments, and Jesus basically said, "Okay, let's just sum it up,
Yeah,
right? Love God with all your strength, all your heart, and
yeah.
all your mind, and the second is on towards essentially do unto others as you would
As
have
you
them
would do yourself.
do
Yeah.
unto you," right? So, excellent point you bring there, and also I'm talking about the idea of doing the things a Christian would do, even if you're not Christian.
Mm,
Um, can we go to church for a second? Let me just go to church. Since Dan brought us to church, we're going to go to church for a second. So I remember one of the passages in the scripture that talked about Jesus and the disciples were out, and
mm,
he was showing them, hey, you have to heal the sick.
yep.
Uh, Pray, miracles, things of that nature as part of your walk. And then one of the disciples, I think, saw a non Christian kind of doing those Christian
Mm.
things. And they wanted to,
Move them.
admonish
Yeah.
and tell them to stop. And Jesus was like, okay, I see you're worked up that he's not a Christian, but he's doing Christian things,
Mm,
and that's even better. And so to circle back to your point, I think, and especially like I know in the United States and in Nigeria, people are so hung up on what I call the mechanics of
mm.
religion.
Like
Like
like every Sunday, go to
yeah,
church,
they have
praying
to
at night.
go to church, and the 17-hour prayers
Yeah.
um, versus hey, I don't know you. Like classic example, my daughter is graduated from high school, and as fate would have it, I had a blowout trying to rush there and park. So at the end, I had to go back and change the tire, and it's like already sunset. It's dark, and my sons are there, and this white family, they just pull up. I think one of their children were graduating as well.
Mm.
But we didn't know that at the time. They said, "What's the problem? You got a flat?" And all of a sudden, they said, "We'll be right back." They drove home, got an air compressor,
Wow.
got a jack, like a proper, like hydraulic, do it in 5 minutes jack. And I thought, oh, I can get that and start changing the tire. He was like, no, he started undoing the lug nuts, like the father,
Mm.
on my tire, right? And he pulled that off, and I put on the new tire. And his father was there, and his mother was there, and they all talked. And while we all did this, and I thought that's what it's
Yeah.
about.
That's it.
That's what it's all because they had no reason whatsoever in that hot ass heat to stop. They were under no obligation. So again, I think to your point, you make a very excellent point that it's not necessarily the going or not going to church. By the way, I think going to for the community is awesome
Yep.
and it's helpful. But to your point, that isn't the crux of it. It's really the spirit of it. So
Well, the problem that I see, right, is people who come out of church, right, or go to church. Once church finishes, everyone gets on their car, starts jamming up, and they're like honk, honk, honk,
yeah,
like
you have the
move
church
it,
suit. We
right?
used to call it the church suit.
Yeah.
Get it, you put it on, go to church. I love the Lord in Jesus.
And then as
Now
you
the
walk
church
out,
is like,
yeah.
you son of a.
And this is what I have problems with, right? People who go and have reconciliation, get their sins forgiven, all that stuff. Next thing they come out, they start swearing at everyone. That's like,
Right,
cutting them
right,
off on the road kind of thing.
right.
And I'm like, well, what's the point? Like,
No, I mean, it's because I go through the same thing you do. Is that Nigerians? I think I talked about this on another uh, conversation we had. Very super religious.
yeah,
I mean, super hyper
with the
religious.
singing and the hands and
Oh, not even that, but like, the Bible, the billboards, the sayings all
yeah,
over the house, right? And again, for all of you in faith out there, this is not to say that obviously there are people who authentically go to
yeah,
church on a
true.
regular, have done it all their lives, and they are truly walking that path. But what we're talking about is those that have piety,
Mm,
meaning they're about the mechanics, the
mm.
clothing, the gold leaf Bible, they're
The like,
honestly
going up to get communion just because the sake of getting
right,
communion, right?
right. And so my children got to a point because I went to church. Let me tell you something. You're Nigerian. You're going to church one way or the other, or you're going to mosque because Nigeria is 50-50 Christian Muslim. So there's no atheism in Nigeria. I don't care what they told you. You're going to mosque or you're going to church, right? And so I've been to church so many times, Yoruba service, English service. I've been to church in Nigeria, the United States, Catholic, synagogue, mosque, Methodist, Anglican. I've done them all, right? I've read the King James Bible cover to cover 3 times. So when my children are asking, oh, and people are, oh, you're not going to church, then I got to bring out a word, right? Again, not to say, oh, I am more spiritual, not
Mm,
at all, but to illustrate your point that is being in the word and being in the spirit and
yeah,
adhering to that. And, Allah, God, the great pumpkin, the universe, whoever you believe in, if they're all knowing and all seeing, can see through your BS anyway, right?
exactly. True, right? That's true.
So,
So yeah, like that's one of the things. So I don't consider myself as a full on Catholic because I don't practice, the going to church
sure,
as well
sure,
much,
sure,
but my ideology and mentality
sure,
is Catholic, right? And
sure,
it's Christian because
sure.
there was this one time we were going from a retreat with my fiance coming back to Sydney.
Hmm.
We had a little bit of a pit stop at one of the stop rest area, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know, do you guys have rest area in America?
Oh, yeah, we're the
Yeah.
rest area capital of the world.
So we were at a rest area, and I saw this guy who was basically had his hood up. He was looking at his car, and he's like looked really stressed. To be honest, he looked like a bum. Like I could
Hmm.
see his car was full of trash. There was a mattress in
Right.
there. I didn't judge. I just came by and I said, hey, do you need help with anything? And he said that he's been stuck here for 7 hours,
Oh,
and no
wow.
one was willing to help him.
Okay.
And I asked him, what happened? Why are you stuck? And he's like, I accidentally slept and left the lights on and the radio on and sort of nodded off and sort of woke up and the battery and everything was flat.
Of course.
And, as I was checking in his car, I could smell,
The
you know,
ganja.
yeah, I could see why this guy nodded off. And I was like basically looking in his car, tried to hook it up, charge everything.
Hmm.
Um, Still didn't work. His battery seemed like it was completely dead. Um, but I didn't just leave him. I
Sure.
basically, waited around, see if there's anyone else that could sort of help him, that kind of stuff. We stayed around for like an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I tried multiple things, which is like, charging the battery, switching to my battery, that kind of
Okay.
stuff, right, to get it going. Um, so I guess the point of the story is that a lot of people just pass by, right?
Sure. Sure.
And it's sad to know that these people could be very Catholic, very Christian, go to church every week and all that stuff.
Yep.
But when it comes to time to crunch,
Right.
they just don't want to be involved, right? Because this guy looked like he could cause problem or
Sure.
whatever,
Sure.
right? And I think that's a bit sad, to be honest. Like someone
Hmm.
who's basically was stuck there for 7 hours
Right.
and didn't have a phone, right? Like, and no one helped. Like, I'm just like,
Sure. Yeah, I think the funny thing that to kind of cap that up before we close is that um, because one of the challenges I had, particularly earlier in life, is that I would feel bad, like, oh, I didn't help that person. They looked like they needed help.
Yeah.
What I found out later in life is that there are opportunities, a lot of those opportunities, and your time will come where you'll know it has to be you. Like you'll know, even
Mm.
if like you're a little worried, you're not sure, like you'll know, like this is mine. Like I've maybe passed that guy on the corner or that lady that needed help, but this person, like, I'm this is the one I gotta.
You gotta help.
And
Yeah.
the spirit I've found will move you and give you the courage to intercede despite the fear, right? And
Mm.
so when I talk to my children sometimes, it's not that you're like, because my wife is like, man, she like help a bum on the corner, meet people at Walmart, right? She's just one of those people that
Yeah.
has a bent towards that. And I like the opposite. I had to learn that stuff. So even when I'll do stuff and, scripture talks about not letting your left hand know what your right hand is
Yeah.
doing. I'm like notorious for that. Like you're not gonna see me do it. I might even deny, oh yeah, it wasn't me. Somebody else helped them. Um, but what I learned is that you have your own opportunity
Mm.
as well. So Dan, Gus, I know we're probably past time. Is there anything else you'd like to throw out before we wind down this episode or
Well,
episode, I should say?
well, actually, just to close off, a little funny story. So I think I've told you this already, right? Because of my kind and nurturing nature, I help people a lot, and that gets me in trouble with my fiance.
I think that should be its own episode.
Another episode.
Episode
but
18,
but
how
you
doing stuff for other MFs piss off your woman.
but you know what? You've seen me in action, right? In Vietnam, you know me. Like I'm very chatty, I'm very friendly. Hey, I get free stuff for us, right? And I still get in trouble.
um,
Uh,
but one last story, and so we close back to the faith. One of the things I don't think I told you is that when you weren't feeling well, we were in, I think, Da Nang.
yes.
So we went to the great statue of that humongous Buddha. I don't know
Oh,
what it's
the
called.
standing lady Buddha,
Yeah,
or
like it
yeah,
overlooks like the planet.
dude, how
And
good is
we
that spot, eh? How good is that
gorgeous.
spot?
And we
It's
rode
so
up
nice.
there, and it was hot. And I know she kind of gave me the P's and Q's on, okay, you got to take off your shoes and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So we went in, and I took a look around. I kind of held back because I saw people praying and giving deference. And I kind of walked thinking she was behind me.
Mm,
And I saw her in there, she was prostrate, praying. And I thought, for someone that young of that generation, to the spirit moved her, she felt strongly, whatever the case may be, and others too, in the
mm,
way I don't really see that publicly in the United States. Do that was just wow. And I waited for her to finish, and she came out, and I said, kind of asked her a little bit what she was doing, and she was praying for our favorite neighborhood Dangus to get well soon, and her parents or something. And I just thought that was, what? That's what it's all about.
yeah.
Wasn't a lot of fanfare, no theatrics, just like the other people there at the shrine or temple. But again, just that little sentiment. And I believe in the name of Jesus that her prayer drove the spirit of sickness from Dangus. It did, in the name of Jesus. I felt it. Anyway,
Hallelujah.
hallelujah.
Can I get an amen?
Praise the Lord.
But yeah, no, like I think one thing I do appreciate is that she is very, I guess, spiritual in that sense. She does
Yeah,
believe in the whole like karma and all that
yeah,
stuff, and that's why I think like her and I we gel very well, right? Like we're
sure.
very nice people in general as a
Mhm.
nature, and we try not to do anything that causes harm or inflict anything
Sure.
on anyone. We try to keep to ourselves, and and I think it's worked really well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So long story short, be good people to anyone and to everyone.
And remember the golden rules. He who has the gold makes the rules. Just kidding. Just kidding. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
How does that work for Trump?
Ooh, no, we will be editing that out. We've
No,
not
no, no, no.
decided.
It's not scripted. No editing.
No, no, we're not, because we start talking about U.S. politics, we can just kiss the last hour of this podcast goodbye.
I mean, you just raised the question of do upon others as you would do yourself.
Okay,
So,
we will tackle that in episode. Okay, if we have 3 or more comments on this video, we will
uh,
talk about politics.
yeah, I'm not very keen on
Someday.
politics, to be honest. Not very keen at all. I'd rather talk about food.
We'll talk about food politics. If
We'll talk about food
3
politics.
comments, if we have 3 comments on this video.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap off. I
Yep.
think this episode is gonna be extended as part 2 because you still need to share your part of the story.
Yeah,
So,
and part 3, because we kind of slipped in some faith, which I think would be a good its own
yeah.
episode. So yeah, we'll work it out. We'll work it out.
All right. Well, that's pretty much it for this week, and hope everyone enjoyed our discussion. We did go a little bit deep on my side, and next time we'll have a little deep and meaningful about Tope's life. Tops. Sorry. Shit. Damn. Tops.
Feds
Tops.
looking
Tops.
now. Okay.
Beep. I'm gonna bleep that out. It's like beep.
Like, subscribe.
Yay.
I'll do better next time.
All right. Well, it was great catching up with you as always, and yeah, it was actually nice sort of talking about my crazy adventure of primary school and schooling and all that.
Yeah,
I don't think I've actually shared that with anyone actually a lot.
yeah, I don't know that you have.
Yeah. So to be honest, like you don't really want to share everyone that you peed in your pants as a kid.
Well, you think about it, everybody's peed on themselves at one point. So
I still do it. No.
hey, it's like the spiral. You do it in the beginning of the life. You do it at the
Yeah,
end
at the end of the life. All right, well, that's the wrap up. And before we go, let's have a little beat.
No glow sticks.
No. All right, I'll catch you later.
All right, take care.
Peace.
Peace.